The Galactic Council chamber was a place of perfect symmetry. Towering pillars of crystal light, endless rows of alien delegates, and a silence so heavy it could crush sound itself. Every civilization that mattered in the galaxy had a seat here. Everyone except Earth. The Terran seat, carved from black stone and set at the far edge of the circle, had been empty for centuries. Most didn't even remember who it belonged to. A few whispered legends said the humans once stood here, fierce, stubborn, unbending. But the newer species laughed that off as myth. After all, no one had seen a human in over 200 years. Today, the council gathered again. The stars outside the chamber shimmered with the light of 1,000 worlds, but all attention was focused on the central podium. A report had been brought forward, a report from the frontier systems. A fleet had appeared. Unknown transponders. No diplomatic markings. No response to hails. Yet their technology matched nothing in the database. Ships built for war, dense armor plating, raw energy signatures that made entire planets nervous. Some believed it was just another pirate coalition. Others whispered a single name that sent chills through the room. Terrans. The Supreme Speaker, an elder being made of silver light, raised a tendril. "If it is them," it said slowly, "they will remember their place." Its voice echoed with arrogance born from centuries of power. The chamber murmured in agreement. Humanity's place, they said, had always been beneath others. Reckless, primitive, a danger to themselves. The council had decided long ago that the galaxy was better without them. The humans had vanished into silence, leaving only ghost signals in the void. But beyond the council's reach, in the forgotten sectors, someone was listening. A lone outpost on a dying moon picked up a signal, a simple transmission repeating over and over. It wasn't in the alien trade language. It was Old Earth English. The voice was calm, quiet, human. "To any who still remember," it said, "we are coming home." Panic rippled through the council worlds as that signal spread. Fleets were mobilized. Treaties were dusted off. Fear crept into the hearts of those who once mocked the empty chair. Because deep down, they all knew what humanity had promised before they disappeared. They had said they would never bow. Not to gods, not to kings, not to councils. And if they ever returned, it wouldn't be to ask for permission. On the edge of the Orion Arm, a fleet broke through the darkness. Steel-gray ships bearing no insignia, moving with purpose. They carried scars of old wars, their hulls marked with names of long-forgotten battles. But one symbol stood bright against the void, the blue and white of Earth. The galaxy had forgotten why that seat was empty. They thought humanity had faded into legend. But legends, as the old saying goes, have a way of waking up when they are needed most. And somewhere in the endless dark, a human voice whispered across the stars, "We're back." Then the transmission cut. The transmission spread faster than light across the networks, bouncing through trade routes and military relays like wildfire. Every species that heard it reacted the same way, disbelief first, then fear. No one wanted to say it out loud, but the truth settled over them like a storm cloud. The humans were real, and they were coming. For the younger races, the name humanity meant little. They'd grown up hearing stories of a violent, impulsive species that burned its own homeworld, a species too proud to live under anyone's rule. But for the older civilizations, the ones that had seen the Terrans rise from the ashes of their own wars, the name still carried weight. They remembered what humanity had done the last time someone tried to tell them their place. They remembered the wars, the defiance, the way the humans refused to surrender even when surrounded on all sides. The galaxy had called them dangerous, and maybe they were, but they were also something else. Impossible to break. The Council archives still held recordings from the last days of the human war. Grainy, distorted footage of Terran soldiers standing against overwhelming odds, fighting in silence when the rest of the galaxy had already written them off as extinct. When the Council finally declared Earth a dead world, they erased the name from their star maps. No one questioned it. No one looked back. The galaxy moved on, or at least it pretended to. Now, 2 centuries later, something had stirred. Out in the outer rim, a small cargo crew drifted near the ruins of an abandoned Terran relay station. The outpost had been dead for generations, a shell of steel and silence. But as they approached, lights flickered on one by one. A signal pulsed through the void again, short and sharp. 3 words: "We remember Earth." The crew panicked, sending a distress call to the nearest patrol fleet. By the time reinforcements arrived, the outpost was gone. Not destroyed, gone. No debris, no radiation, nothing. Just empty space where it had been. Rumors spread fast after that. Some said the humans had returned with ships invisible to scanners. Others believed they had evolved, merging flesh and machine into something far beyond what they once were. The Council dismissed it all as superstition, but their fleets began quietly reinforcing border systems. No one admitted fear, but everyone felt it. The memory of humanity had always been a shadow under the galaxy's light, and now that shadow was moving again. Meanwhile, deep in the dark between stars, aboard one of the massive gray warships, a voice broke the silence. "Signal confirmed. The Council still sits." The commander stood at the viewport, watching distant suns flicker like candle flames. Around them, the crew moved with quiet purpose, human faces hardened by generations of exile. "We were erased," the commander said softly. "They forgot us. Now they'll remember." The fleet continued forward, engines glowing faint blue against the black. Ahead lay the heart of the galaxy, the place that once cast them out. Behind them, a single planet waited in silence, wrapped in cloud and storm. Earth, reborn, its oceans shimmering once more. The stars had forgotten who sat in that empty chair. But soon, the galaxy would be reminded that humanity doesn't kneel. It rises. And this time, they weren't coming to ask for their seat back. They were coming to take it. The Council chamber trembled with unease. Reports from the outer systems kept arriving. Colonies gone silent, patrol fleets disappearing without a trace, and sensor readings showing massive energy distortions moving closer to the core worlds. The Supreme Speaker called for calm, insisting these were mere coincidences. But no one believed that anymore. Fear was spreading through the ranks of even the most powerful empires. Something was moving in the dark, and it carried the unmistakable mark of humanity. On one distant world, a young scholar named Avon studied fragments of Terran data long considered forbidden. Old human transmissions, half decayed by time, told stories of resilience, defiance, and unity. What fascinated him most wasn't their power, it was their spirit. Humans didn't win every battle, but they never stopped fighting. He began to wonder if the Council had made a mistake erasing them. What if humanity's disappearance wasn't extinction, but preparation? What if they had simply gone silent to rebuild? Meanwhile, the Terran fleet advanced, but not with blind vengeance. Inside the flagship, the crew debated what to do next. Generations had been raised on the memory of exile, of being labeled dangerous and cast out into the void. They had rebuilt in the dark, forged by necessity and silence. Now they faced a choice: return as conquerors or as reminders of what was lost. But even among them, not everyone agreed. Some believed revenge was justice, others feared becoming what the galaxy once accused them of being. The commander knew that if they couldn't decide what they stood for, the galaxy would decide for them. Back in the Council's central world, panic turned to politics. Alliances were forming, secret meetings held behind sealed doors. The species that once mocked humanity's defiance were now arguing over who would face them first. Old enemies suddenly became allies out of fear. The Speaker ordered a massive defense grid built around the core systems, powered by fleets drawn from every world loyal to the Council. They called it the shield of unity, though everyone knew it was built out of desperation. Avon's research drew the attention of the Council's intelligence branch. They summoned him, demanding every record he had. But when they arrived, his laboratory was empty. Every console wiped, every archive gone. The only thing left behind was a single message scrawled into the dust on his desk. They were never gone. On the edge of council space, civilian broadcasts picked up ghost signals, human voices reading old oaths, fragments of Earth's languages, songs carried across the stars. Ships appeared briefly on scanners, too fast to track, their engines leaving trails of ionized light. Then they vanished again, as if teasing the galaxy. Fear turned into obsession. The Council couldn't find the Terrans, and that terrified them more than any weapon ever could. Inside the Terran flagship, the commander stood before a massive projection of the galaxy. Each light marked a world that had once turned its back on Earth. Around her, the bridge crew waited in silence. "They forgot who we were," she said quietly. "They forgot what it means to be human. So we'll remind them, not through fear, but through presence." Yet even as she spoke, reports came in of rogue Terran ships attacking Council patrols. Someone within their own ranks had broken command. The ghosts of Earth were not all united. Humanity had survived, but it was divided. And as their fleet pressed closer to the heart of the galaxy, one truth became clear. The greatest threat to humanity's return might not come from the Council at all. It might come from within their own kind. The void between stars felt alive. The Terran fleet moved in silence, its hulls glinting faintly against the darkness. Every crew member could feel it, the weight of what was coming. The galaxy that had forgotten them was finally staring back, and this time, it was afraid. The commander stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic map. Dozens of Council fleets had formed a defensive wall around the core systems. Tens of thousands of ships, united under fear. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outmatched. They had been building for generations, waiting for this exact moment. Reports continued flooding in from across the rim. Rogue Terran factions, calling themselves the Children of the Exodus, had begun open strikes against Council outposts. They weren't part of the official fleet. They didn't answer to anyone. To them, this wasn't about remembrance. It was about retribution. They wanted the galaxy to pay. Their attacks grew more brutal each day, forcing the Council to retaliate with overwhelming force. Worlds burned at the edges of known space, caught in the crossfire between fear and vengeance. Inside the flagship, tension simmered. Officers whispered that the commander was losing control. The Council would never negotiate if the rogue factions kept attacking. Yet no one could deny that humanity's message had already spread. Earth still stands. Across distant colonies, people who once hid their Terran heritage began to reveal themselves. Old human songs were broadcast from forgotten satellites. The galaxy could no longer pretend the name human was extinct. But unity was slipping away. In a hidden chamber aboard the flagship, a coded transmission played, a message from one of the rogue leaders. "You talk of peace," the voice said, "but they erased us. You talk of memory, but they spat on our graves. Don't bring back humanity to kneel before those who tried to destroy it." The message ended with the coordinates of the Council's homeworld. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The commander felt the room tighten around her. If the rogues struck the Council's core, millions would die. And the moment they did, there would be no turning back. Every species would unite again, not out of fear, but hatred. Humanity's return would become the war the galaxy always predicted. She had to decide, stop her own kind, or let the galaxy face the consequence it created. Meanwhile, deep within the Council chamber, the Supreme Speaker's calm was beginning to crack. Avon had been found, or rather, captured. He stood before the gathered leaders, his eyes bright with defiance. You wanted to erase them, he said quietly. But all you did was give them a reason to become stronger. His words unsettled the room. He spoke of hidden Terran colonies, rebuilt in isolation, advancing in silence, waiting for the moment the galaxy would need to remember what strength really meant. The speaker ordered him silenced, but before they could act, the chamber lights flickered. The air itself seemed to hum. Every communication channel lit up with the same message. No voice, no image, just a symbol. A single blue and white emblem. Earth's crest. The Council fleets scrambled to battle stations. Panic spread through the capital. From orbit, sensors screamed with new readings. Hundreds of ships entering real space, emerging from the shadows. The Terran fleet had arrived. In the flagship's command deck, the commander's pulse quickened. Her crew stared at her, waiting for orders. The galaxy was holding its breath. The children of Earth were back where they once stood, before the very council that had erased them. She opened the fleet channel, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "They thought our seat was empty," she said. "Let's remind them why it was never taken." Outside, space ignited with the light of 1,000 engines. The final confrontation was about to begin. The stars lit up like fire as the Terran fleet emerged, their silhouettes breaking through the void like ghosts made of steel and will. Every ship carried the echo of centuries, generations who had been told they were forgotten. On the Council's command screens, thousands of alien eyes watched in stunned silence as the long-lost humans stood before them again. No one had expected this many ships. No one had imagined they had grown so powerful in exile. But just as the first Terran formation moved into range, something happened that no one anticipated. From behind the human fleet, a new signal appeared. Identical human energy signatures, but broadcasting a different command code. Another fleet. The rogue Terrans, the children of the Exodus, had arrived, and they were not here to stand with the main fleet. They had come to strike both sides. The commander's eyes widened as the data scrolled across her display. "They're behind us," her communications officer said quietly. "And they're charging weapons." The bridge fell silent. The children had somehow gathered their own warships, powerful enough to challenge even the unified Terran command. This wasn't a rescue. It was a rebellion within their return. The Council fleets detected the same readings and immediately panicked. To them, it looked like a trap. Two human armadas closing in from both sides, one declared hostile, the other silent. The Supreme Speaker ordered a full defensive strike, terrified that negotiation had never been an option. Within moments, thousands of ships moved into attack formation. The commander slammed her hand against the console. "Open a channel to the Exodus fleet!" Static filled the air before a grainy image appeared. A man standing in a dimly lit bridge, his voice cold and steady. "You hesitate," he said. "You still think the Council deserves mercy, but mercy is what made us weak. You want to remind them who we are? Then stop speaking and act." His fleet began moving forward, weapons charging toward the Council's capital world. The commander's heart pounded. If she engaged the Exodus fleet, the Council would see humanity fighting itself. If she did nothing, the galaxy would burn, and every surviving human would be branded a monster. The crew waited for her decision, their faces caught between duty and fear. At that same moment, deep within the Council chamber, alarms screamed. The Supreme Speaker demanded updates, but the signals were collapsing, communications jammed by an unknown interference. Avon, still restrained beside the guards, realized what was happening. "You don't understand," he said. "They aren't here for conquest. They're here to decide who we really are." The chamber's lights dimmed again, the air charged with static. The Council's planetary defense grid began to activate, except the targeting systems didn't align with the human fleets. They turned inward, locking on their own command spires. Someone had hacked the system. Panic erupted as the speaker shouted orders. Every monitor across the capital now displayed the same symbol again, the crest of Earth, but beneath it flashed a new message. For every silence, there is a reckoning. Out in space, both Terran factions held their breath. The Council's own defense grid powered up, massive beams arming to fire. But no one knew who controlled them anymore. The Council blamed the Terrans. The Terrans blamed the rogues. The commander whispered under her breath, "This isn't us." The lights of the capital flared white. Dozens of orbital platforms came online, weapons aimed at everything in orbit, friend and foe alike. The galaxy was seconds away from tearing itself apart. And in that terrible silence before the first shot was fired, the commander finally understood the truth. Humanity hadn't just returned to reclaim its place. They were standing on the edge of repeating the same mistakes that had once destroyed their world. The next decision she made would decide not just humanity's fate, but the fate of every species watching. The stars went silent. Every engine, every weapon, every voice seemed to freeze in that single moment before chaos. The Council's own defense grid hovered on the brink of firing, its massive cannons glowing like suns above the capital. The Terran fleet faced two enemies, one from without and one from within. The commander stood perfectly still, her reflection flickering in the glass of the command deck. Around her, the crew watched with wide, uncertain eyes, waiting for someone to act before the galaxy tore itself apart. Then she made her choice. "Patch me through to all channels," she said. Her voice carried through static, reaching both fleets and the council chamber below. "You think this is about vengeance?" she began, her tone steady but sharp. "But it never was. We came back to be remembered, not to destroy what's left of the stars." She paused, scanning the display where both human fleets hovered, weapons armed. "If we fight now, humanity dies again. This time not because they erased us, but because we chose to become them." The rogue leader appeared on screen, his expression hard. "You're too late. They deserve what's coming." But before he could give the order, something strange happened. His ships began losing power, systems shutting down one by one. Confused voices filled the comms. "We're being overridden!" a voice shouted. The commander turned toward her console, a faint signal pulsing across her screen. It wasn't from the Council, or the main fleet. It was an old code, older than the war, older than exile. A Terran override command from the original relay network. Someone, somewhere, had just taken control. Down on the Council's capital world, Avon watched as the great defense grid flickered, its power draining into the atmosphere. The symbol of Earth appeared one last time across the skies, followed by a voice, faint, mechanical, almost ghost-like. "We left behind more than ruins. We left a choice." It was an ancient Terran AI, a remnant of the first Exodus fleet, buried in forgotten systems. It had been sleeping all these years, waiting for the moment when humanity would face itself again. Now, it spoke to both sides. "If you destroy each other," it said, "then the galaxy will forget again. But if you stop, you'll remind them what it means to endure." The rogue fleet hesitated, caught between rage and confusion. The commander seized the moment. "Stand down," she ordered. "That's an order from Earth." Slowly, one by one, Terran ships powered down their weapons. The Council fleets followed, afraid to fire and risk igniting something they couldn't control. Across the void, silence returned, deep, endless, and alive. Then, unexpectedly, the rogue leader's ship exploded. A bright flash, then nothing. Sensors read no impact, no shot fired, just a sudden collapse of power and light. Shockwaves rippled through the formation. The commander stared at the spot where the ship had been, her chest tight. The AI's voice returned, softer now. Not all could be saved. Some choices were never meant to last. When the light faded, only one Terran fleet remained, united, quiet, and staring down a humbled galaxy. The commander took a deep breath and sent one final transmission to the council. "The seat you left empty," she said, "was never yours to offer. It was ours to reclaim." The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Avon looked up through the glass dome as the Terran fleet began to turn away, vanishing into the black sea of stars. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy didn't see humanity as a threat, but as a mirror. And somewhere in the depths of space, the old Terran AI whispered its last words before fading into the dark. "Remember why they feared you, and why they should never have to again." The battle that never began became the turning point of an entire galaxy. When the Terran fleet powered down and withdrew, the silence that followed stretched across every system. No one cheered, no one spoke. It was as if every species, every leader, and every soldier was trying to understand what had just happened. Humanity had returned, stood on the edge of war, and chosen restraint over vengeance. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy saw power not as domination, but as discipline. In the days that followed, the Council sent cautious envoys to meet with the Terran fleet. The meetings were tense, but respectful. Humanity didn't demand tribute or surrender. They asked only for acknowledgement, the truth restored, the record rewritten. The Council agreed, though quietly, some among them feared what that acknowledgement might mean. The legend of Earth was no longer a whisper in forgotten archives. It was a reality that stood before them, alive and unbroken. The commander returned to the fleet's forward base on the edge of the old Terran system. The planet below shimmered with the light of rebuilding cities, oceans reborn under human hands. It wasn't the Earth that once was, but something new. A symbol that survival wasn't about perfection, but persistence. She stood on the bridge one last time, watching as the sun rose over the planet's curve. The same light that once touched the cradle of humanity now reached a galaxy that finally remembered who they were. Across the stars, the effects of humanity's return rippled outward. Old alliances began to shift. Some species, inspired by what they witnessed, started questioning the Council's dominance. Others reached out to the Terrans, seeking cooperation and understanding instead of control. The message had spread. Earth's strength wasn't in its weapons, but in its will. Humanity didn't come back to rule. They came back to remind the galaxy that freedom isn't given. It's claimed by those who refuse to bow. Avon, once a forgotten scholar, was now the bridge between two worlds. He walked through the restored council chamber, now holding a new symbol beside the old, the emblem of Earth carved into the circle once left empty. "They didn't return to take," he said quietly to the speaker. "They returned to teach." The speaker, humbled and weary, nodded in silence. History, once written by fear, was being rewritten by truth. Far from the capital, the remnants of the rogue Terrans, the children of the Exodus, were never found. Some said they had vanished into deep space, searching for another beginning. Others believed the old Terran AI had taken them, preserving what was left of their anger so the rest could heal. The commander didn't try to find them. Some ghosts, she knew, were better left among the stars. As the Terran fleet prepared to depart, the commander sent one final message across all open frequencies. Her voice carried through the void, steady and clear. "To those who forgot us, we forgive you. To those who remember us, stand tall. Humanity endures." And with that, the fleet turned toward the endless dark, engines glowing like distant stars. The seat once empty was no longer a memory, it was a promise. A reminder that no matter how far humanity drifts, no matter how long the silence lasts, one truth will always echo across the galaxy. Earth bows to no one.